Hi, welcome to video 5, Makerspace Knits. This is the Learn to Knit series. Let's talk about circular needles. We decided we're going to do some circular knitting, so we need to get the goodies we need to do that. So you may have these already in some form. You may need to do a little shopping. So we'll talk about some different types of circular needles so that you know a little bit more, if you haven't gone shopping yet, about what you might want to get. That being the case, the needles you buy for your Learn to Knit for this exercise, the pattern we're going to do next, don't have to be your forever needles. You can get what you have available or use what you have available in the house and then decide later on maybe you'll want to try some different things. So they don't have to be your forever needles, they just have to be your right now needles. Two different main types of needles. We have our double pointed needles, which look like this. They're little double pointed sticks, and then you have your circular needles, which look like they have a cable and they have two like tips that are connected. So let's talk about double pointed first. So these needles are bamboo. They are 7-inch US 13 size needles. So you would use this with a pretty big kind of yarn, a chunky, bulky weight yarn. Maybe getting 2 or 3 stitches to an inch. You can get them as big as, really, I think they've come at 15s, 17s. I've seen them. Probably not much bigger than that, but who knows. I actually have, I got a set of these. They come 5 to a set. And you can actually buy a whole set of every size of double pointed needles. Usually you can get them on eBay or get them on Amazon for $20 for every size from size 1 up to 13 or something like that. So that is what I did. So you might start out knitting on something big like this, and then you might end up going smaller. And these are even smaller needles. These are size 3. I actually have size 1, size 0 needles I use for socks, and they are tiny. The really tiny ones do break once in a while, so you might either want to go with sturdier needles that aren't wood, or you might want to go with metal needles, or you might just take your chances, have one of these break once in a while. They're not very expensive to replace, but if you are rough on needles or if you are really wrenching on them, they will bend and break. Sometimes a cool thing about bamboo is that it does flex a little bit. It gives you a little bit of give, so that if you are doing something that requires a little bit more give in the needles, that maybe that would be a positive thing. So these are very popular. You can find them. Also, Clover makes bamboo needles. They make fixed circular needles. They make double pointed, so you can get them in Michael's, Joann's. Any big box store would probably have them as well. So those are your double pointeds. These right here these are circular needles. These particularly are called fixed circular needles because they have a fixed join and they have a fixed length. There's no changing this. This particular one I think is a 29 inch or something like that. Basically it's 29 inches from tip to tip, and you would use this kind of needle to knit in around, and knitting a fair bit of stitches. You would have to knit something that's at least going to be 29 inches around to use a 29 inch needle, or close to that anyway, because you need your stitches to be at the tips so you can work around in a circle. And we'll take a look at that in a second, but that's why there's different lengths of cable, because you're going to knit different things. You can have a fixed circular that's just 9 inches, or really tiny 5 inches. I've seen them really tiny. Most likely they come in common sizes, 9 inches, 16 inches, sometimes a 25 or 24, a 29, a 32. Different manufacturers make different lengths to their needles, but there are usually somewhere in that ballpark. So these are Clover Takumi. These are a number 7, a size 7, 28 inch long fixed circular. Other circular needles that you can use are these, maybe you've seen them or heard about them. They're called interchangeables. Interchangeables are great for some reasons. You don't have to buy every single size and every single length of fixed circular. So that's a benefit. So say if I was knitting a hat and I just needed a short cable, I would just choose what cable size I need, choose what needle size I need based on the yarn, the pattern, how I knit, whatever, gauge. And then you would just screw these bad boys on here. And give them a tighten. There's usually a little like stick thing you put in here to tighten them pretty well on there. And put the other end on. And then you have a needle that you can knit with. The interchangeables are great for a couple of different reasons. It's very easy to change needle size, which you might do. Sometimes you'll start knitting on one needle size, have to change to another because maybe your knitting's too tight. Maybe the pattern says to change needle size. That's one way to make bigger stitches without actually increasing. So that's an option. So it's easy to do that. You just unscrew them, screw the new tips in, you're ready to go. Sometimes maybe you'll start off small and then you might need a longer cable. So it's easy just to switch that out as well if you had to for some reason. So it cuts down on the actual number of needles you have. Instead of having size 1, 5 different sizes of size 1, 5 different lengths of size 1 fixed circulars, you just have one pair, 5 cables that you can use with any tip. It cuts down on the amount of needles that you're buying. There are some negatives about interchangeable needles is that because they have more parts, there's more that can go wrong with them. I have had needle tips break. I have had the joins. I've had this cable come out of here and rip out completely. I've had, actually this happened to me the other day, I had a screw that had become stripped somehow, and so the needle tip is permanently stuck on the screw now, and I have to get a new new pair of tips and a new cable because they're stuck together. I can't replace them. I can't separate them, so I'll have to replace them both. A lot of times, if you have problems with interchangeable needles, the company who makes them may take them back and may switch them out for you. So that's also a consideration. These particular interchangeable needles are made by Knit Picks. They are called Harmony Interchangeables. They have a very distinctive pattern on the body of the needle. This is made out of a laminated birch. So this is a little bit more slippery than a bamboo is. These are a great middle-of-the-road needle. Maybe if you're not quite up to using metal needles or don't want to use metal needles for that particular yarn, but are kind of finding that the bamboo is just a little bit slowing you down too much, these are a great middle-of-the-road needle. You can find needles made out of a lot of different things, anywhere, wood, bamboo, metal. You can find them made out of weird things like milk protein. You can there's a lot of different things. They also come in the body of them sometimes is square, gives you a little bit more grip on your needles. So there's a lot of different kinds. You'll try out a lot of different needles probably over the course of your knitting life, and you'll probably settle on what you like best for most things. For me, these needles are pretty good for most things. The only thing I don't like about these needles, actually there's 2 things I don't like about these needles, is that when I'm knitting with dark yarns, sometimes the pattern, because it's a little bit darker than say a bamboo needle is, I can't see the needles as well. Actually, Knit Picks just came out with the same exact needle without the pattern, and it's in a very like a bleached kind of color. I think it's called Sunwash or Sundance or something like that. And I actually just got a pair of those, so I'm going to try them out as well. You can buy these in a set, which means you get every single size of tips and a couple different size cables to interchange. It usually is cheaper to buy the set than it is to buy individual needles. I have a lot of different individual needles because I couldn't really settle on what I liked. So now I probably will be buying a set of these or something similar to these for the bigger needles. However, I still will probably use different fixed circs in very small sizes for sock knitting. So that's that. The cool thing about these needles, I said before, is you can just change the cable out. So let's say that I wanted a bigger cable. I could choose something like this, this is actually a 47, and this makes a 47-inch needle. So that's pretty huge. They go all the way up to 60 inches for individual cables, and then also there's little connectors that you can buy that actually can connect two cables together back to back. So you can make like a mega super cable if you wanted to do some sort of crazy Afghan that required a big long needle. You can use circular needles to knit flat things. And the way that you would do that is you basically would just not join in the round. You would just knit you would have all your stitches on one side, and you would knit them off onto this needle, and then this needle would be free, and you would just knit back and forth like that. You don't have to join your knitting in a round in order to knit on circular needles. So that's another reason I use a lot of circular needles, is because I don't have many straight needles, and I don't particularly like straight needles because all your knitting is in one hand on one needle, whereas if you're knitting with circular needles, you can kind of let some of the knitting hang on the bottom, and it's not as much weight on your wrists. So if you have hand issues, that may make a difference for you. I am getting actually pretty bad carpal tunnel in both my hands over the past 3 years. It has gotten worse. I'm sure that's not helped by the knitting, but certainly I try and do some things to save them if they're really, really sore, and sometimes that makes a difference. So you have your fixed circs, you have your interchangeable circs, you have your double pointeds. There's a couple things that you can do to get around using different needles. Sometimes if you're using on double pointeds, you can switch from double pointeds to circs. Basically, you would just knit all your stitches onto a circ as you go around. So you can flip back and forth between using double pointeds and circs. Most commonly, you might start on a circular needle and then knit those stitches when you're decreasing, say for like the top of a hat, is very common. You would knit them onto double pointeds, and then you would just have a couple stitches on each of the double pointeds. Let's get that back in focus. And then you could just you can knit till you have not a whole lot of anything, like maybe just a couple stitches on there, and then just sew up the top. So even if you choose circular needles, if you prefer circular needles, you will not get around using these because you will have to use them for some specific things. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we actually take a look at the knitting. The second thing that I don't like about these needles, the first one was the color. The second thing is the needle size isn't printed on the body of these needles. I don't know why. Probably something having to do with the finish, or maybe they just don't want to mess up the pretty pattern, but they're not printed on here, which is unusual. Most needles will have it printed somewhere. These don't, and I actually think that the other Knit Picks metal ones might not have it on there either. So to check needle size, say if you just find a random needle, you don't know what size it is, you need a needle gauge, and that is what this is. It's basically just a piece of something that has a whole bunch of holes in it and will tell you how big your needle is. So basically you're going to put your needle in. All right, this doesn't fit in a 3. However, this fits into the 4. So this is a size 4 needle. And that's how you know. A lot of these little gauges you can find, they have a couple different things on them. Sometimes they're like just multi-function. This one happens to have rulers on it, so it has centimeters on the top, it has inches on the bottom. It has like a little gauge square measuring thing. I don't particularly use that much. I usually use a cloth tape measure instead. But some other useful things about this, very common, you can just find this in the store, or any other kind of knit gauge will work as well. So that's circular needles.